Comment cards for the items that are on the workshop agenda. So anybody who would like to speak during the session today, you are welcome to submit a card. I'm also going to let you know that we're going to be taking a lunch break today. We're going to break around 11:45, 12 o'clock, depending on when we finish on an item, and then we'll come back together about 1 o'clock. All right.
Is there an additional item this afternoon, or will we just be continuing what we haven't finished?
I'm assuming we may continue, but if we finish before noon, terrific. All right, I'm going to ask for a roll call.
Commissioner Bernard,
Here.
Commissioner Kerner,
Here.
Commissioner McKinley,
Here.
Commissioner Marino,
Here.
Commissioner Sachs, Mayor Weinroth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard, would you please do the invocation and lead the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This morning we'll do the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Do we have any additions or deletions or substitutions to the agenda?
Mayor, members of the board, we do not have any additions, substitutions, or deletions for the agenda today.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved. Moved by Vice Mayor Weiss, seconded by Commissioner Kerner. All in favor, all opposed? That's passed 7-0. We move on to the regular agenda. We have a couple of items here. First, from the clerk of the Circuit Court and Controller. Can I have a motion to receive and file?
I'll move.
And motion to approve the contracts?
Yes.
Okay, so item 3A, 1 and 2 has been moved by Vice Mayor Weiss, seconded by Commissioner Kerner. All in favor, all opposed? That is approved 7-0. Moving on to item 3B1. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Weiss, seconded by Commissioner Marino. All in favor, all opposed? That is approved 7-0. Moving on to two administrative items, regular agenda item 3C1 and 2. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to move to approve 3C1 and 3C2.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Weiss, seconded by Commissioner Kerner. All in favor? All opposed? That's approved 7-0. Okay, that finishes up our regular agenda. Yes, Commissioner Kerner.
My apologies, Mayor. Thank you for recognizing me. 3C2 was the item on the redistricting, I think.
3C1? Okay, so I'll amend my motion to 3C1.
Okay, 3C2 is now in front of us. Do we need to? Tried to really approve this thing quickly, you know. Mr. Rutter, you're on.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, good morning. Thank you. This is your commission redistricting item. Request before you is permission to advertise for our new commission seats. Really quickly, just run back some of the information, what we've done to date, and give you the lay of the land of where we are right now. Again, began in May, saw you in May and June. setting the table for where we are now, essentially. September, we received the census information, began working with our consultants, reviewing it immediately in September. Done some work with the school district and coordinating our efforts, maps, things of that sort along the way, and have been to you a number of times, spoken to you individually, spoken to you, back in early November, on November 2nd, reviewing our conceptual maps, and we received direction from you at that point. Just to give you a quick flavor of on the public participation side, we've had a dedicated website that's been up for over a month now, I believe it is. We've conducted 2 virtual meetings, one in October, and then we had one just last week. We had about 30-ish participants last week in our virtual meeting. Public comments received, and we've had the portal open for email comments as well. So all this information, and we've been doing our best to share with the public that all of our information is out there for everybody to see along the way, and all of our postings in anticipation of these items. So again, we're before you today for permission to advertise, hoping to get that from you today and then return to you on December 7th for adoption of our maps. And then really quickly, just to run through the requirements, the most relevant point is, per statute, we have to conduct for county commission seats, they have to be done in odd-numbered years. We need to get this done this year. We're before you, and appreciate your feedback to date and hoping to keep that going and get this wrapped up for December 7th. Run through really quickly the criteria we utilized, which you directed us to utilize back in the spring, and achieving population equity, adhering to Voter Rights Act, following natural boundaries, integrity of communities, compactness, contiguity of districts, and preserving the core of existing districts. I think we shared last time, and I'll emphasize it again. Each one, meeting the requirements of each one might unfurl or unwind the best objectives of another one, and we've done our absolute best and presented to you that balances all of those interests. You could look at the design of districts, you could look at population deviations. We've worked through, I don't know how many permutations, I think we're in the 60s or 70s now, and they all present different ways, but we have, working with our consultants, put great effort into meeting the requirements of all of those points. So quickly showed you this last time, running through the math. If you took our current commission districts, applied 2020 census numbers, that total of $1.4 million and change divided by 7 yields an ideal population for each district, a little over 213,000. So you see what the deviations would be with our current commission districts. And I'm going to call your attention to remembering, you see District 6 was 3.36% under deviation. District 7 is 2.63% over. So we're right at essentially 6% deviation. And just remember that, if you will, when we talk about our deviation from the proposed maps we have for you. Showed you this last time as well, but the notable points from the census, certainly seeing white population decrease, getting close to 115,000 for our 1,492,191 census 2020 residents, and then our Hispanic population increase going from 19% to 23.5%. So we spoke to you in November, on November 2nd. We presented to you 2 maps. I think it was 7D and 8. Your direction was 8 with a number of points and tweaks to make along the way, which we have done. And we took 8 and we included this in the backup. So you've got this map showing 8 with the changes the board directed. You see the red identified areas. Those are changes that we made following direction, and some changes that we needed to make to respond to some of those changes, quite frankly, that occurred. And then on the left there in the box is the text depiction of the changes. It's just a short description of what was done from which district to which district, and a very short bit of reasoning behind it. And I do want to point out one thing as I move to the map. Working, again, following your direction, following those points, and working with our consultant, we were able to further raise a couple populations which we felt important. District 7, maintaining a strong black population majority in District 7. We've raised that number now to 51.79%. And if you remember, both the maps we were looking at for the Hispanic majority district that we spoke to you previously about in November, we were in the 50s. I think it was 50.22 and 50.77, if I remember correctly. We've continued to make some tweaks, again, following your direction. That District 3, majority Hispanic district, is now up to over 51%. It's 51.26%. So taking those points, I think we've made some good changes and hit on that. So before you now is our proposed map with the modifications that you directed and ours. I just ran through the numbers on the, some of the finer points on populations. I would point out that the map that you're seeing there, proposed redistricting map, you've got a population deviation of, excuse me, a little bit over 5.1, getting close to 5.2%. And I'll call your attention back to the population deviation without changing districts was at 6%. Working with our consultants, I think we talked about this before, 10% is an absolute maximum, cannot go beyond. Consultants have made it clear, would love to see it less than where we would be without making any changes. That 5.99%, we've beaten that even more. We've got it about 0.6% lower. So I think we've made good progress on that point, meeting your requirements. Now, we do need your direction on one point. And I'm going to call you this map that I have up here. It's, again, proposed redistricting map. We've got parens 2. Need your direction on a specific point on a matter. It's the Boca West community sitting between districts 4 and 5. I would tell you that when we began this process, we identified Boca West, and there's another community, Boca Grove, south of it. We included that in District 4. We were looking to really clean up that line, sharpen up the district lines in the area, and included it there. No, there's been a question about it, and we've got the math in front of you. I would tell you that the Paren 2 map would have a population, so you could see, let me walk back actually. So the proposed map we have would have a population deviation in District 4 of 2.52% over. District 5 would be 0.19% under. The next map over, that Paren 2 map, would have a population deviation of 0.63% over for District 4 and 1.7% over for District 5. So that's the only other point that we really need specific direction on. Don't think it would make any other changes to our other issues or concerns. Again, I would tell you that going back, we initiated that. We're looking to clean those lines up. That's a consideration. It's not the only consideration that's out there in the world by any means. We take a lot of things into account, moving these around. But that was the starting point for discussion. One last thing I wanted to touch on with you. All of you received a letter from the Hispanic Vote of Palm Beach County. It was dated November 15th. And I actually reached out and spoke to their chair about a week and a half ago to work through it. They had they identified some points that they would like to see included in our maps and some recommendations to the board. I talked it through with them for about an hour or so and talked about what the board had directed us to do, our process, where we were, things of that sort. And just to quickly run through, one of the first things was recommending redistricting scenario 8, which is what the board did direct us to do. That has been done. They had some specific areas they'd talked about, specific geographical points. I would tell you that we had already included a number of them. We did not get all of them. I don't want to misrepresent this, but we had already hit on a number of those points. It goes back to the same thing. When we looked at all of what they spoke about, adding some unfurls others, and it just created balancing issues. But we think we've got a lot of those points covered. Last one was recognizing the remaining Hispanic population throughout the county. And I whether we use the term fracking or how we identify it, a couple things I'd point out to that degree. You do have two districts, so we've got our majority district that would be potentially created. You do have two districts that have strong populations as well. So you would have District 2, which is almost 30% Hispanic in the proposed map, and then District 6 is over 24% as well. Going back to the presentation of the Hispanic population overall, if you looked at it, it is dispersed widely throughout the county naturally. It occurs in all districts. Obviously, percentages are higher in different areas. What led us to the map which you directed us to do with the District 3 creation of the majority, when you look at the census maps, the numbers really jumped out in that area, and it helped us build it in that location. But there is strong Hispanic populations of different numbers all throughout the county, throughout all of our districts. So we really think we've touched on all those points. I failed to introduce everybody here. We've got Jerry Wilson on WebEx, who I'm going to ask to speak in just a second to touch on the points as we work through things with him. Patricia Banya, Planning Director, Kevin Andrews, Deputy Planning Director, Bob Banks. Yes, Kevin Andrews is in the back. This is Kevin Fisher. Too many Kevins. They've all been working extremely hard on this, moving, tweaking, clicking buttons, making maps. They go to sleep at night seeing maps and colors and things of that sort. So you've got great folks who've been doing a lot of work to bring this home. And Jerry, if you can hear, I would ask you to just say a few words. We've been working closely with Jerry and Steve on these points. And Jerry, if you have anything to add, I'd appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, commissioners. Steve Cody is actually on his way to be with you, but the train was delayed from Miami. We are satisfied that the districts perform as anticipated and as predicted. We think that the plan gives the protected classes in your jurisdiction the opportunity to elect candidates of choice to public office, primarily to the commission. We think that the plan addresses the criteria that you adopted, and we thank the staff for the hard work that they put in to make sure that we brought this process to the point where you're now able to adopt something that we think is legally defensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And Mayor, that's it for us. We're available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rutter. Okay, we'll open up to conversation and discussion from the board. Commissioner Sachs, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'd like to applaud this board and especially the staff for recognizing the Hispanic voters of our county. This is really a beginning, inauguration of recognizing a protected class, and also to applaud the staff for protecting those classes of voters who are so important that make up the diversity of Palm Beach County. The strength of this board is that every commissioner brings to the board a different background to enhance this conversation today. My background is, as you know, in the Florida Senate, where we had 2 redistricting commissions and a lot of controversy. But we got through it with the Florida Supreme Court designing our lines. And I had the opportunity to serve on the Select Committee of Redistricting for the Florida State Senate, where we went around the state, Tampa, Jacksonville, Orlando, Miami, and had town halls with regard to how well our lines were being drawn. So this is what I bring to this discussion today, and that is a background in redistricting and fair districts. As you recall, everyone, it was in 2010 that we had the amendments 4 and 5 to our Constitution that would but require fair districts. So I applaud again, let me go back to the staff, on page 3 of the staff's report, you outline the criteria to redraw the district boundaries. And if you review achieve population equity, 10% or less variance among districts' population, among commission districts, which has occurred. I have a motion, or proposal, I don't think a motion would be proper at this time, but I would certainly agree with the map that is designated as 2021, proposed redistricting map, parens 2, end of parens. And that is found in the staff report that would be on page 7 of the staff report. And specifically, let me draw your attention on this map of this proposed redistricting map, subsection 2, that it maintains the integrity of District 5 when it comes to the very bottom, I would say the middle of District 5 and the end of District 4, the continuity of lines. And I would recommend to this board that we follow not only the criteria that has been outlined for our redistricting here in the county, which is to maintain integrity of communities of interest, including municipal boundaries. So let me say for the record that based on my background and my experience and my review of what we need to do in this redistricting issue is to maintain the integrity of the communities of interest. District 5, which is my district, has no cities. District 4 is made up of many cities, or a couple of very important cities. And the portion of District 5 that is being designated as going over to District 4 is county. It is not city. So to maintain the integrity of communities of interest would keep the continuity of District 5 intact. Again, going back to your criteria, which is found on the bottom of page 3, preserve the core of existing voters' districts. The portion of District 5 that is being proposed to go over to District 4 has been in this District 5 way before I was here. In fact, this area was created in 1991. Boca West was created in 1991, and we're talking about Boca West. In 1991, it was part of this district, District 5. And the people of this area always knew who to call when they had a problem with garbage pickup or anything else. They called the staff of District 5. So under the criteria which was designated by this county commission, that area called Boca West, District 5, should remain in District 5. There is no compelling reason that I have heard of that would change the boundaries for a section of District 5 to move it into any other district. Looking at the criteria, which is found again on bottom of page 3, there is no item there that says to clean up a line. God Almighty, if we were here wanting to clean up lines, we would be living in the state of Kansas. Kansas is basically a very square state. It's easy to draw lines if you have a very square state. We live in a state, and when we drew the redistricting for the state of Florida, it was tough. And I used those same criteria, which was designated by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Fair Districts Amendments of 4 or 5 to the Florida Constitution, that you do not use a criteria of straightening out lines. Folks, we don't live within lines. We live in communities. And it is to those communities of interest, which is where these lines should be drawn. So, in conclusion, let me say that I propose that we use the map, which I've already designated, but let me say it again. It is the map which is stated 2021 Proposed Redistricting Map Parens 2, which is found on the staff report on page 7, which maintains, of course, and preserves and makes sure, guarantees that we have Hispanic and protected classes that will be drawn. But it also makes sure that a community of interest that has been in District 5 since the day it was developed and created in 1991 stays there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacks. Commissioner Bernard?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple questions for staff. I guess the question that we're trying to figure out is, what do we do with this, with Boca Grove and Boca West? Can you give me like the population for Boca West? What's the population?
I will look up the exact number. I believe it is around 2,000,
2,000.
but I'm going to check
Okay.
right now.
And what about Boca West also?
1 second, Commissioner, we'll get you the exact number.
And I guess if I'm looking at the line that separates these, is that the turnpike? If I'm correct.
Yeah, correct. So that is the turnpike to the west of it. Boca West is a 4,027 population, and it's showing on the presentation now the difference between the two maps. So it's the variation of map 8 to the variation of map 8-2 to the right-hand side. And then the Boca Groves, I believe it's under 2,000 population.
Yeah, that's around 1,000 in Boca Grove.
1,000.
Around 1,000 in Boca Grove, and like Patricia mentioned, just over 4,000 in Boca West.
Okay. I know for me, when we initially accepted map 8, which was, I believe that had both Boca Grove and Boca West, was it in both districts, or which district was?
Scenario 8 had both Boca West and Boca Grove in District 4.
In District 4, okay. And so I know that for me, I supported for both of those districts to be in District 4. And so with this proposal of Boca Grove being in District 5 and Boca West being in District 4, that would be a map that I would support. And I know that Commissioner Sacks have represented both communities, but for me, the proposal, the 221 proposed redistricting map, splitting Boca Grove into District 5 and Boca West into District 4 is something that I would support.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner Kerner?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like the board to consider a request by me, and I've had conversations with Mr. Rudder about this, about retaining John Prince Park and Lantana Airport into District 3. It would be a pretty easy amendment to the map. It would not change the demographics or population or voter statistics in any way. As you are all aware and have authorized litigation regarding Lantana Airport and jets landing there, along with some mediation and other interfacing with the FAA on that issue, along with just my personal history and background with John Prince Park and Lantana Airport. If the board would consider an amendment, it could be easily accomplished by the staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Kerner. I see from Mr. Rudder that could be accomplished. Mr. Rudder, do you want to explain?
Very minimal. We took a look at that, very minimal population, and we can do that. We're comfortable with the contiguity.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to take a moment to make my comments on this. I think that, as was pointed out by Commissioner Bernard, in the past iterations, we had both Boca Grove and Boca West into District 4. I think that their interests are contiguous with the city of Boca Raton. In fact, that's the reserve area for Boca Raton. There's a potential eventually for that to become part of the city, although that's certainly not in front of us today. I understand the need to have a further balancing of D4 and certainly would accept the idea that Boca Grove will stay in District 5 to keep that balance, but I really think that District 4 should have the Boca West in it, again, because of their contiguous interest with the city. And certainly, I know that they know how the phone works, and they can dial District 4 as quickly as they dial District 5. So I'm going to support Commissioner Bernard in putting either map, we don't have a number, but the redistricting map or the redistricting map changes, which is the first two maps that we have in front of us, and I'll leave it to my colleagues to decide as far as which of those two they might want to move forward for advertising. Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Appreciate it. My question, this is serious business. This is serious business. If there is any issue that we're going to discuss as county commissioners, this is probably one of the most serious because it guarantees the right to vote. This is not a political grab. Redistricting is very, very important because it stems from the Civil Rights Act. It is not, I want this community, I want this country club, or I don't want this country club. I'll give you this one, you give me that one. No, no, no. This is, let's get back to what we should be doing. Fair districts is about guaranteeing communities of interest and that people stay together in their community. It has nothing to do with making straight lines. It has nothing to do with, oh, this area may become part of the city and opt out of the county. That's another issue. If a community wants to opt out of the county and go into a city, that's up to the vote of the 3,400 families that live in Boca West. We don't draw lines based on that. I have yet to hear from anybody either on this board or on staff or our consultants the answer to this one question. What is the compelling interest to move thousands of families, 3,400 specifically from one area, and about 1,000 from another area, move them from one district to another district? Not one compelling reason other than, I don't know, I haven't heard it yet. This is not about a political grab. This is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And the MAP 8, which we all agreed would include the communities of interest and the protected classes. There were two of them, and one of them I worked on for a while with staff. But it wasn't presented at that time because the most important issue was not whether one country club was going to go into one area or another area. We're not talking about country clubs here, folks. We're talking about keeping communities of interest together. This community of interest has been together since it was created in 1991. And I just ask that when we review whether a country club is going to go from one district to another, that we have a compelling reason to do that, because we're moving thousands of families from one district to another. And I have yet to hear that reason, a compelling reason, based on the Civil Rights Act or the Fair Districts Amendments. And when I hear that, then we can have an open discussion about it. But until then, this is nothing but a political grab other than what one commissioner wants or another commissioner wants. Let's stay focused on communities of interest. Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Wilson, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
The commissioner from District 5 mentioned a compelling interest. Would this board have to adhere to a compelling interest in terms of deciding the boundaries for District 4 and District 5? And my other question would be, does this board, do we have to follow the Fair Districts amendments, I believe 3 and 4, that was passed in 2010?
I can respond a couple of ways. Your redistricting process is statutory. And the Fair Districts amendments, as they were adopted for legislative and congressional redistricting in the state, they don't really apply to local jurisdictions to the extent that they override the statutory concerns as written in the Florida statutes. This whole notion of compelling interest and communities of interest, it's important to you to the extent that you factor that in and not stray from the primary concerns, which are balancing the population of the districts and providing an adequate level of representation to the protected classes. Beyond that, this is a give and take situation, and you have to make some decisions about how you want to accommodate the various communities.
So in regards to the fair districts, this board doesn't have to adhere to the fair district standards. Is that correct?
I think they are a good set of standards, but in actuality, you're controlled by Florida statutes, and your process is not the same as, the state legislative process. Mm-hmm.
And so the compelling standard, is that more from I'm just thinking for, when we're talking about the Voting Rights Act, would the compelling standard be more in regards to making sure that you have the communities of color, or like the Hispanic district, would that be more of a compelling standard?
Yes, that is more compelling. The criteria are, how do you say, they're in a hierarchy. The primary concern is balancing the population. You have a lot of leeway there in terms of how much deviation any individual district can have.
So
obviously within that context, moving 1,000 people here, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, it just has to be tested. And then we move down the hierarchy, and then we approach this community of interest issue as, as more perception. What is it that you want to accomplish in terms of maintaining the core of these existing districts?
Okay, because compelling interest, wouldn't that be more of a Supreme Court standard for just to make sure that you have the communities of color to be compact and to create that? But for, communities of interest, wouldn't that be more rationally related, or that type of standard?
Yeah. Yes. You have to determine what you consider communities of interest, but the Supreme Court talks about them in terms of maintaining boundaries of cities. What we do is use traditional boundaries. That could be, and then traditional units of population. We measure performance using the precincts and how they are kept together. There's just no guarantee, or there's no compelling interest that requires you to keep a city or town completely together, especially when you measure it against these, these higher issues of balancing population and providing the protected classes with adequate representation.
Just one last question, Mr. Mayor. So in regards to, if we decided that we wanted to follow the Turnpike line, to complete this district, would that be pretty much be rationally related to do that?
You could do it as long as it doesn't impact on the population standard. We don't want to blow the deviations out of the water and end up with a plan that has a 12% overall deviation or anything like that. But these are things that can be looked at, and you can take them block by block, or you can set a boundary that you want to achieve, and then all we have to do is just test that theory and see if it'll work and does not impact on the other standards above it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. I'm still going to stick with my propose that we stick with the first map because I know that we don't have to use the fair district standards. I was part of the redistricting in Tallahassee during the 2012, and so I participated and went throughout the whole state to talk about the different maps, and so I was on the redistricting committee. And so I do believe that this map, subject to adding the Lantana piece, should be the one that we should use. We've decided to split the baby. Boca Grove would go into District 5, and Boca West would go in District 4. So,
Commissioner Bernard, would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we accept the 2021 proposed redistricting map, subject to putting Boca Grove into District 5 and Boca West into District 4, and also adding the Lantana Airport as Commissioner Kerner had requested.
And the park.
And John Prince Park.
Right. Okay, I have a second by Vice Mayor Weiss. We have a motion on the table. Commissioner McKinley?
I was actually going to support Commissioner Sacks, but the motion is already on the table. I understand. I mean, if there's really no strong reason for changing the district lines right now, I don't see any need to do that. I just also wanted to thank staff along those same arguments, keeping Palm Beach Gardens whole by taking that one neighborhood and putting it into District 1 out of my district, keeping the city of West Palm Beach whole by removing two of the neighborhoods that are currently in District 6 into District 2, keeping Royal Palm Beach whole by redrawing the other proposed map and putting that area between Southern Boulevard and Okeechobee Boulevard back into District 6, keeping the neighborhood of Homeland whole by redrawing those lines instead of cutting a gated community in half. I appreciate that. I had some original concerns, and I think they were a little misconstrued, and I just want to say I hope I didn't ruffle feathers with the COBRA organization when I mentioned my concerns. I have so much admiration and respect for that organization. They are recognized in Tallahassee as being an extremely powerful homeowners association. So my concern wasn't, it was a compliment. I had a little concern about putting 4 county commission districts within the boundaries of one homeowners association. I'm not going to win that argument, and I am throwing up the white flag on that one and hope that whomever my predecessor may be has a good working relationship with them. I understand wanting to do what we can to keep those neighborhoods on the west side of the turnpike intact as much as they can be, and to keep a clean line there on the northern end of District 5 and the southern end of District 6, and look forward to trying to establish some relationships with them ahead of time, ahead of the vote next year, and just want to thank staff for doing this. But again, I ask, is there a major difference? I mean, I haven't really been paying attention to that southern end of the county there on these maps. Is there a major difference one way or another? Can you go over that population difference again?
Commissioner, the population deviation, so if you go off the redistricting map, before we talk about the paren 2 one, the population deviation total, which is what we really are drawn to, is 5.16%, still far below our 5.99%. The paren 2 map does reduce it. Both numbers continue to work, though. But in the paren 2 map, the population deviation reduces about 3/4 of a point to 4.53. Again, for both of them, I'd say it doesn't affect the District 3 Hispanic or the District 7 Black number, doesn't affect anything else. Both population deviation numbers work. This is really a board direction point. It's one where we've looked and tweaked and made a number of changes along the way, going back to the beginning when we drew the first maps, throughout the process, taking direction. So many of the points that we take as direction do precipitate the need for some other moves. But we think we've gotten it down to this point, and this is, notwithstanding the further direction on the Lantana Airport point, we're really down to this one for direction.
So Patrick, just so I'm reading these maps correctly, because a lot of maps have come across our desk, I'm looking at the first map on the top there that you gave us. So there is, between District 4 and District 5, there is approximately a 6,000 population difference.
0.6 of a percentage point, yes.
Okay, and so that is the one that is on the table right now for a motion to approve with a couple of modifications to the Lantana Airport. Whereas the other one, the paren 2 map, it's only approximately a 2,000 population difference.
Yeah. Let me clarify. Let me do the overall number, if you don't mind. The original map that is the subject of the motion, the total population deviation, 5.16%. The paren map 2 is 0.6% less of a deviation, 4.53%. Both deviations work under the guidance of our consultants. Again, it beats that 5.99 that reflect our commission districts today.
Okay, I'm seeing a deviation percentage difference of 0.63 and 1.7, and on the top map, 2.52 and a negative 0.19. Do I have the right maps?
You do. I'm speaking to the total population deviation across the board for all districts. What any two changes make, but I'm still looking at the big overall one. That's the one that guides us. I understand your point, Commissioner, but I'm expressing it in the overall point perspective.
Okay, so why wouldn't we try to keep the population difference to a smaller number?
That's why we're seeking the board direction on this point. Again, I would tell you that they both work from this perspective. This is one that we really needed the board direction on this specific point.
Okay. I'm good for now.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Responding to my colleague from District 5, I don't believe anybody here is looking to disenfranchise anybody. I think everybody is going to have a vote. Everybody is going to have access to 7 commissioners, not just their district commissioner. I think that what has been done here in this map has satisfied the objectives of this board in establishing a second minority district, which, as a result of working that, has forced some imbalances in population to ensure that District 3 had the total population necessary to have the ability to elect a minority candidate and continue in District 7 to have the same ability. I think that, as I said before, there is a contiguous interest with respect to the population in Boca West and the city of Boca Raton, which I think is, again, something that we're trying to address. I think that the requirements that were put in front of our redistricting staff with respect to keeping the deviations to the legal parameters has been met, and I support the motion that's been made by Commissioner Bernard to accept the 2021 proposed redistricting map. Commissioner Sachs, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And thank you, Commissioner McKinley, because Commissioner McKinley and I, District 5 and District 6, we have no issues with moving some of my excess population into her district, and that's, and thank you very much. We both agree openly that there are some districts, some areas, communities, and you mentioned them, Homewood and Heritage Farms, that also should stay together in one district. Furthermore, thank you, Commissioner, for recognizing, and Mr. Rutter, you confirmed that the map, and this is only for the record, because I want it very clear on the record what is occurring today, that the map that I proposed, and I didn't make a motion because I wanted to have a little more discussion, but I guess there's a motion already made by Commissioner Bernard, but that the map that I favored, which is subsection 2, has maintained all the communities, the protected classes, Hispanic as well as the black populations. Those are all included in the map of subsection 2. And what my point today is this: it's very simple. We follow the law. Staff follows the law. Commissioners should follow the law. We take an oath to follow the Florida Constitution and the United States Constitution, as well as the criteria, which is based on the law, and I don't need to talk to lawyers because I don't want to belabor this point. And the criteria, which is found on page 3, the bottom of page 3, does not indicate any reason, to remove 3,400 families from the date that it was created in 1991, this community, to another district. I just want that on the record. Every criteria that is stated on the bottom of page 3, there's not one that would require, propose, advocate, or suggest that we would move 3,400 families in a community from one district to another. Thank you, and it's pretty clear which map that I want, and it includes the area for Commissioner Kerner for the Lantana Airport, and also Commissioner McKinley and I have not had an issue. But I go with what the law is on the Florida statutes, which is Amendments 4 and 5, as well as the United States Constitution, which is applied to the Civil Rights Act of '65, but especially the criteria, which this board should follow, which does not have one reason to suggest that we would move 3,400 families. So thank you, and you know what my issue is with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Mr. Rutter, Commissioner Sachs has raised the issue of following the law. Does the map that we have in front of us that has now been moved by Commissioner Bernard, does it follow the law?
I will let Jerry or Bob chime in further, but I would tell you that both maps do represent, again, the criteria that this board directed us to follow. I don't want to call them contradictory, but some you meet differently. We can hit one of them and it does unfurl another one. So we work to cover all of them. There are some certainly related to preserving our existing minority black district and then creating our Hispanic district as well. Some rose to different levels. So many of these finer points are difficult to make and work through, but I would tell you that both of these maps do follow your criteria and would be considered legal. I'll look to Bob to offer any further
Mr.
word.
Banks, does it follow the law?
It's legally defensible, yes.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Weiss, you're recognized.
I just want to reiterate or re-ask that question. Does this violate the the Voting Rights Act of 1965? Do either of these maps?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further comments. Do we have any comment cards, Commissioner Kerner?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then I'm going to ask for a vote. I'm going to make it a roll call. Clerk, would you please call the roll? I'm sorry, Commissioner Marino, did you want to be recognized?
To clarify, we are voting on direction, correct?
The point is that we are giving direction to the staff, if we approve this motion, to advertise the 2021 proposed redistricting map.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you. The clerk can call the roll.
Commissioner Bernard,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerner,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner McKinley,
Yes.
Commissioner Sacks? No. Mayor Weinroth,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weiss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have direction. So staff is going to do preliminary reading and advertise for public hearing on December 7th at 9:30 a.m.
Correct.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, that finishes our regular agenda. We're now going to move on to our workshop agenda. We're going to do infrastructure surtax project plan overview and status update. Do we need a break before we get into that? We're looking, no one's asking for a break. We'll move forward. County Administrator.
Mayor, I just want to thank staff for putting in many hours on this, including weekends when we're here going through various versions. So Kevin Andrews, Kevin Fisher, Patricia Bean, along with Patrick, thank you very much for all the hard work. I really appreciate it because I didn't personally have to move lines this year. So this was worth it. I've actually done Decennial twice, and staff did an excellent job to prevent me from having to do it a third time.
And you missed doing this, I'm sure.
I did have fun on Saturdays when we came in to play with the Lions, but no, they did an awesome job, and our actual attorneys that work with us, they also pushed us, and we were able to meet the standards on either map that you were given. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm glad we got past that. You are recognized.
Good morning, Sherry Brown, Director of OFMB. I like to refer to today as OFMB Day, so I'll be your guide for the day. We'll start with our Surtex plan. I'm joined at the table by David Ricks, our county engineer, Ismaila Colazo, Director of FDO, and Jennifer Cirillo from Parks and Recreation. We did present this to our Surtex committee last week, and they asked a lot of questions, and they recommended that it come to the board. So we'll start off with just where the plan started. It was approved by the voters in November of 2016. The tax began January 1, 2017. It's 1 penny. It's up to 10 years, which would be December 31st, 2026. But there is a clause that it could end a year early if we collect $2.7 billion by September 1st. We're really close. I've got a couple of slides on that, so we'll talk about that later. It created our Citizen Oversight Committee. The school district gets 50% of the penny, we get 30%, and the other 20% is divided by our 39 cities, and it's based on their populations. It's, the surtax is just like the state sales tax. It applies to all transactions subject to the state sales tax. The first $5,000 is for the surtax. Anything over a $5,000 purchase is limited. Many items are exempt, like groceries, baby food, formula medicines, and the biggest thing for us is that the surtax stays local. I included the language from the ballot. It kind of dictates what our plan looks like. Some of the things for us here is our public safety vehicles and equipment, equip, construct, and repair roads, bridges, signals, streetlights, sidewalks, parks, drainage, shoreline, and wastewater infrastructure, our recreational and government facilities, and again, it was for a 10-year maximum. The board adopted the plan in April of 2017. It was $709 million. At that time, we estimated our revenues to be about $810 million. We felt like that added a contingency to the projects, and our main project goal was to make sure we could do all the projects on the list. I'm going to turn it over to David Ricks to talk about some of the projects that they have completed to date and some of the things they're working on.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, County Administrator, in terms of the project for the engineering and public works, we've been pretty busy. We did 333 resurfacing project at a value of $24 million. Started a couple signal arm projects and systems projects. Also did 2 drainage pipe replacement project, $1.3 million. And then we had some projects that, and then we had the initial plan, they were actually completed by others. We had a project by DOT, Seminole Bridge, or Lakewood Drainage District project. And then they had the renovation major project at the Kravitz Center. They did some infrastructure project around the intersection, Okeechobee and Sepulveda Avenue. And then we've got multiple projects underway, either design or under construction, 15 bridges, 16 resurfacings, a lot of restriping, 2 pathway signal system projects, and several drainage projects, improvements, and pipe replacements.
We'll go to facilities.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. It's me, Jala, Director of Facilities Development and Operations. Of the projects included in
Excuse me,
the-
I think your mic went off.
Into this. Better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, I apologize for that. Of the projects included in the ISD project plan, we have completed the countywide and sheriff radio replacement projects. 3 projects are substantially completed with closeout ongoing: the new PBSO evidence building, the main county courthouse electronic systems renewal replacement, and the main detention center electronics. We have 7 projects that have commenced and are in various phases of development. Under the housing units for homeless, extremely low and low-income project, we have the Cottage Homes Initiative, which is under a developer and operator agreement with the West Palm Beach Housing Authority. Design has been completed and permitting is underway. Under the countywide ADA renovations project, we have improvements for various county facilities. Currently, 4 projects have been initiated at Delray Health, Lantana Health, South County Admin Complex, and the West County Admin Complex. The PBSO headquarters project, as you know, is currently under construction, and phase 2 of the same is commencing early 2022. The renovation project for the 4 Points building will provide for the consolidation of the Youth Services Department at the facility and the relocation of the Office of Equal Business Opportunity to the Airport Center 1. Design has been completed. The detention facilities renewal replacement project is currently on the design phase for the West Detention Tower. The Homeless Resource Center 2 is currently under design and permitting. And finally, the renovation and expansion of the Animal Care and Control Facility is approaching closeout of the initial design phase as approved by the board in 2020. Completion of the design and eventual construction is dependent on allocation of additional funding.
Good morning, Jennifer Cirillo, Parks and Recreation, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Of the park projects, you'll see we have many smaller projects in scope than the other two departments. We've started approximately 188 projects. 72 are complete in the different 16 categories. We do manage most all of our projects working through our Facilities Development and Operations Department, so that's important to note. And approximately 60 to 70% of the expended funds are on high priority safety projects. You'll see our playground replacements and sports lighting in particular. And sports lighting is also consistent with the BCC priority of environmental resiliency as well. You will see a note on new park development. It does include our Canyon District Park, but it also includes deferred multiple community parks addressing equity needs in our communities. Through our park deserts, identification of that. So we'll get into that a little bit later specifically, but parks like Paulette Burdick Park, and though not specifically in the IST, also working on a phase 2 of Gramercy Park as well.
So that we'll move right into our revenue projections. So here's our revenue summary. So what we've collected through fiscal year 20 is about $313.5 million with another $7.9 million in interest earnings. Our estimate for FY21, even though we're already into fiscal year 22, because of the accruals that we do, we still have one more monthly payment to come in to complete 21. But our estimate is $97 million. It's almost 11% higher than 2019. And at the beginning of 21, I would have never, ever expected an 11% increase over 19. So it's much greater than what we would have projected a year ago. Beginning in October, for the current fiscal year 2022, we adopted the budget about $90 million. The state estimates came in a little bit later than our budget process, and they're estimating that our collections are going to be $19.1 million for the current year, which is considerably higher than what I would have expected them to be, but I would go with the state estimate. It's about 1% higher than our 21 estimate. For fiscal year 23 and 27, this scenario here assumes a 3% increase, and that's how we originally built our plan, is assuming a 3% increase. When we picked the 3% as we were doing the sales tax, we looked at some of the sales tax revenues that came into Palm Beach County, and over a 20-year period, it averaged about 3%, so we felt comfortable with that when we built our plan. Our estimated reserves right now in 22 is about 73.5. Those are the reserves where our revenues have come in higher than what our planned budget had been for each year. And on this scenario, it would take us all the way out through the whole 10 years ending on December 31st, 2026. So then I went back and I said, well, how close are we? Because the revenues are coming in so much stronger than what I would have even expected for the current year. And I know we're really close to ending it early. So this scenario assumes that we have a 4% increase. So we took a 4% increase over our current year estimate and continued that out throughout the rest of the time period of it. If that should happen, we would end it a year early, and the tax would end on December 31st, 2025. So I'm assuming right now that we'll go with the 3%, and we'll just have to monitor it from year to year to see if it ends early. But our gross revenues throughout the whole plan, the 10-year, would be $959 million. We estimate about $22 million in interest earnings. So we could see a plan of $981.6 million. Our adopted plan, as we saw earlier, was $709 million. We have made a few changes over the years. We added $1.7 million for our playground equipment early on. Recently, we added $8.4 million for the sheriff's facility. So currently, our plan stands at $719 million. And this assumes that we would have $262.1 million more than what our current plan is. So with our current excess of 262, departments have come back. We've re-looked at our whole plan. You know, we're about halfway in. We're 5 years into a 10-year plan. And the projects are looking like they will need an additional $204.5 million. Just as a reminder, when we first adopted the plan and we looked at it, we had consultants review our projects, and they agreed that yes, the projects were needed and that the estimates were reasonable at that time. And then we'll go through some of the detail of where the funds are needed. We'll start with engineering.
Thank you, Sherry. So for engineering, looking at the overall summary, start at 196, we're needing an additional $67 million. And of that, most of that cost, increased request is bridge modification from, $12 million to $27 million, bridge replacements, $31 million to $61 million, and then resurfacing from $74 million to $94 million. So for the bridge modification replacement, like Sherry said earlier, we did have an engineering assessment initiative beginning of this program. We recently went back and did another assessment looking at the recent cost factors and also structural issues, and these are more accurate numbers in terms of what we need reflecting. And so the bridge modification, we're talking about 9 projects, bridge replacement, 9 projects. And then for resurfacing, in the overall program, it's about 120 projects listed. We've done 33 so far, and on the list for asking for additional funding, we're looking at 60 that's listed further on in this presentation. Next slide. So, and this is, looking at some of the projects in detail, looking at the bridge modifications. One of the biggest ones is the Palm Beach Lakes over the railroad. It's about $14 million total cost, we think the true cost is. We've actually submitted a request for a federal grant, RISE grant, to see if you can support us and get some additional funding on that. And then the bridge replacements, partial on this slide, and then the next slide, talking about 9 projects. Next slide. Of that. And like I said earlier, it's related to re-looking at the structural engineering assessments, and then we think these are accurate costs. Then of course, you got drainage improvements, and then pathways, and then resurfacing. There, like I said earlier, there's on this, this slide and some others, the following slide, 60 total projects, and most of that is just the cost of asphalt as recently as reflected in terms of these costs. And so we've done 33 projects, 120 projects total in the resurfacing program. Next slide. More resurfacing. You can see just all the projects are listed in terms of refunding that's requested, and we've gone through each of the projects with the staff and the consultant to see what is really needed with those projects. And with those projects, we do ADA improvements along that criteria, and also we do drainage improvements if needed as we get into assessing those projects. And so that's what these costs are reflective of. Next slide. So, and so you're at slide, okay. And so for the resurfacing, again, starting at $47 million, and based upon the request in terms of increases, about $20 million. Yeah, that slide.
Okay.
Right.
Ready? Yep.
And then for the signal systems, surprisingly, the costs are pretty reasonable. We're going from span wire to actually mast arms, and the costs have been pretty reasonable on that. So we're only asking for $450,000 for cost increases on those. Next slide.
And then to facilities.
Facilities Development is requesting approximately $107 million of additional funding to carry on with the approved projects. You will notice that there are some specific projects that drive that increase. And before providing you additional details in each one of them, I would like to state as a general comment that we went back and revisited all estimates and provided for escalation staff costs to be included, okay? As of the latest information we have available, depending on the development phase for each project. The first project that I would like to highlight is animal care and control. Back in May of 2020, if you may recall, we presented a comparative study and gave the board 4 different options as to the possible renovation of the facility. Option number 3 was selected by the board. Funds at the time were not sufficient to cover that option, and the increase you see there of roughly $27 million provides for the option selected by the board. The next project that reflects an increase in budget needs is the Government Center Renewal and Replacement Project. That is a project that is commencing just this year. We just started the procurement phase for the design services. Back in 2016, when the project was first estimated, only basic building systems were included. We do feel that to perform a full renovation of this facility, we need to provide for other matters other than basic building systems. Therefore, we went back to the estimate and included a cost estimate providing for a full renovation of the facility, which includes for finishes or provisions for finishes and space allocation. The next project that I would like to highlight is the Homeless Resource Center number 2 project, which has seen an increase of approximately $9.2 million over its initial budget. This project is currently in the design phase. We have included cost increases for escalation staff, but it has mostly seen a difference in overall scope. Back when this project was originally ambition in 2016. It was supposed to be a daytime service center to be sited at John Prince Park. As we all know, that project has evolved during the past years, and the evolution of that scope, overall scope has resulted in the budget increase. Then I would like to highlight the courthouse build-out and renovation. That project provides for the build-out of the 7th and 8th floor of the project of the main county courthouse, and it needs to be assessed in conjunction with the Judicial Partners Record Warehouse. If you notice, we are basically deleting the full amount of the project budget for the Judicial Partners Record Warehouse, because back in 2019, the county and the Judicial Partners entered into an MOU to scan records rather than to build a new facility. Therefore, we are requesting to allocate that additional funding to the build-out of the 7th and 8th floor and cover for additional renovations that are needed. And then lastly, as I shared before, the headquarters project, PBSO headquarters renovation project is currently underway, as we have fully pursued construction of the facility. We have identified additional areas that will benefit from renovations, and we would like to include those as part of this current request.
And then so for Parks and Recreation, we did fairly good in the estimates. We came in under in a few projects and over in a few, and really 3 projects make up the bulk of our additional funding needs you'll see. In our aquatic facility repair and replacement, it's really Lake Lytle Pool and Aquacrest Pool. Initially, we thought those would be renovation projects, but as the structural engineers went in and took a look, and in swimming pools in particular, when you look below the deck and behind the walls, you often find that things aren't as they appear on the surface. So those projects we determined need to be a complete replacement. And so that is the bulk of the funding needed there for those 2 projects. And then also under new park development, when we get into that, you'll see that that's primarily Canyon Park. Our changes there are quite a bit of earthwork that was unanticipated, stormwater retention, including for the library that will be built on the adjacent property where the soccer fields are now, as well as just construction increases, materials, and the estimate might have been a little bit low to begin with for that park. So overall, the consultants did a good job estimating at the time the estimates were put together, and we'll get into those projects we came under a little bit in the next few slides. So the next slide's a detail projects that also need additional funding. I mentioned the aquatic facilities and the inflation escalator on the project, so those are specified here. And on the following slide, we do have some projects that came under, so athletic field renovations in particular. We look to partner anywhere we can for additional funding sources, whether that be through a grant, a nonprofit partner, CDBG funding, through our HES office. So you'll see Glades Pioneer Park Athletic Complex. We're very blessed to have a partner out there in the Orange Bowl and other partners that have come to the table. One of the good things about Canyon Park that we discovered is some of the lights on the current soccer fields out there are reusable. So they will actually, our plan is to move those out to Glades Pioneer Park and reuse them on a field, another football field that we didn't think we could light, and now we can light. So that's a good positive thing. And then on the next slide, you'll see also, oh, I missed it somewhere, but lighting, our lighting projects, when we get to those, they actually, that's one technology. The construction costs have not gone up in. So LED lighting on sports fields, when this was first passed, was not perfected. Now the marketplace is very competitive for that. So those prices have actually come in a little bit under to light sports fields with LED technology. And final slide, did you pass our new park development?
I was on a bit.
Yeah, we passed new park development, but I did want to talk a little bit just more about that and addressing that equity need. So again, although not specified in this project, we do have parks that we look at communities and realize they need a park. Plantation Homes is one of those communities. We're looking to acquire property there to build a park. Gramercy Phase 2, we are going to look to leverage our partnerships and look for CDBG funding there, but this could be tapped as a final resource to get that project done. So that's what we're looking at when we talk about community projects. Those were deferred projects in equity areas of need. We call them park deserts. And we have parking lot lighting, which is always exciting, but for us it really, really is. We had lights literally falling out of the sky when this was first passed, so we're glad to take care of those projects. And then our public building repair, replacement and expansion. And restroom replacement, if you've ever visited a park, your restroom experience is the most important thing to you. So we're glad to have those on the project as well. And there's our savings in sports lighting replacement that I spoke about. You'll see that a few of those projects, the actual additional funding came in a little bit under because of that new technology development for sports lighting. Oh, the one thing I did want to, I'm sorry, Sherry.
Go ahead.
The one thing I did want to draw to attention, we have sanitary sewer to septic replacement here. So Juneau Park, we originally went in with just a septic system replacement project, but it's very, very close to the intercoastal waterway. So the right thing to do is for the environment is to convert that to sanitary sewer. So you'll see that additional expense there as well. And it's possible we may have additional funding come into the county yet to be determined for septic to sewer conversion. So if that happens, these projects may come off this list altogether. So that's very exciting as well.
So next step. So if our revenues come in at the 3%, we collect all the way through 2026, the 10 years, our revenues should cover all the projects on the list, plus these increases. If it should end a year early, that would mean we would not collect one whole year. We would see a shortfall of about $38.4 million. You know, the departments here at the table, they're always looking at grants. Would hope that maybe we would see some of our bridges funded maybe by the infrastructure bill. We did present this to our Surtax committee last week, and we would bring this back to the board in January for formal adoption if you're good with it. And then we'll go into questions.
Thank you, Sherry. Before I get to Vice Mayor Weiss, obviously this is a very dynamic situation, especially as you said, the infrastructure money that's going to potentially come to the county. Also, can you answer, is there going to be an impact to the county if the legislature follows the governor's recommendation, suspends the gas tax?
There would be an impact to us for gas tax.
And so, yeah, County Administrator?
That would be a significant impact to us. And in order to continue on the road we have that funds projects through gas tax and impact fees, we're going to have a problem in which we would then be potentially looking at ad valorem dollars to make up that difference.
Yeah, it seems to me that we're going to really need to step back and figure out, number one, as far as the new revenue source that we can anticipate coming in from the federal government, the offsetting reduction that's potential if the legislature goes along with the governor and suspends the gas tax for however many years, and how that's going to affect public transportation and again, these projects. So I think that, again, it's really dynamic right now, and on top of that, of course, we haven't even talked about the labor and material shortages right now, which are driving up costs. We have obviously the contractors who are complaining that the amount of time that it takes between bidding and being awarded a contract is causing them financial problems because of the inflation that's going on. So there's a lot of things here that, moving parts. So I'm not sure how we address this and how we even start planning for the infrastructure money that are going to come from the Fed so that we can have shovel-ready projects and be able to jump on and get that money focused on some of these projects. But I think that there's a conversation that needs to be had more than just this overview today.
Yes, sir. We have had discussions regarding infrastructure dollars that may be coming down the pike. We are moving forward with projects, reviewing them, getting them ready to issue because we've got funding source here. But if infrastructure dollars come in and we're able to supplant those infrastructure dollars with the existing sales tax dollars, that is going to be my number one priority. And then that will help with the long-range plan of completing all of the projects we told the public we would do. We have been, and thanks to this board, we have been very consistent with keeping projects we promised the public would be funded through the sales tax intact. Those costs have increased. And so if we can find and we have been looking at other grant funds, and those that we can bring in, we're bringing in, we'll substitute the revenue source, and that will continue to help us. Bridges, roads, et cetera, are part of the infrastructure the infrastructure tax that we are very hopeful will be able to supplant our sales tax dollars for those dollars. So that's going to help us in the long run. But the gas taxes are really going to hurt us on the revenue side. We will feel that impact. Our gas taxes, I want to say almost half of it now goes to help support Palm Tran in their operating budget. Those dollars would need to be replaced with ad valorem if we lost those gas tax dollars. The other gas tax dollars help with our road projects. And so the fact that we're struggling with impact fees, hopefully the courts will make a decision soon in our favor. That should help us as far as staying constant. But the loss of gas tax is going to have a significant impact on us and the taxpayers. If we want to maintain our current level of service, we're going to need to look at you for ad valorem dollars.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. I appreciate that. Vice Mayor Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the excellent presentation this morning. Couple comments and questions that I have for you. So my understanding is with the online sales tax that has just taken effect in July. The reporting on it is minimal so far, and based on my understanding of Florida law, that we may not get figures still for another couple months because if they don't have history with Department of Revenue, then they don't provide monthly tax receipts. They're on a quarterly basis. So a lot of that money is not going to show up for, I guess, a month after the first quarter had ended. So any thoughts on what's happening with that online sales tax and how much that's going to add?
I would expect it'll take some time before we see any real effect in our revenues from it. I mean, even when we started our surtax back in January 2017, not every business added the 7% immediately. It took a few months, even with all the mailings and different things that we had done to market and let them know about it. So we have not gotten any estimates from the state directly at a local level as far as what that impact. But I'm assuming their $98 million estimate for 22 must be taking something into effect for it. But not, I haven't seen anything specific for just online sales.
We have you don't know if in fact what they're allocating for that in their estimates.
No. Mm-mm.
I think it would be really important, I mean, for us to try and get as much information on this, because it very likely it could likely trip this a year earlier.
Correct.
Regardless of whether you get your 4% growth.
Right.
Based on your previous estimates.
I'm assuming that the state has taken that into consideration when they gave us our 22 estimates, because they are so much higher than what we collected in the current year in 21. It's about 1% higher, so I would think it's included in there, but they have not broken it down as far as what they consider online sales or not. But
okay, well, if you think it's included, if you're thinking that it is included, then why wouldn't that continue on in out years?
well, you would see the increase in year one, and then you would still continue to see it increasing on forward.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I don't know if we're speaking, but.
All right. On our engineering project plan by category and the increases, and I understand, but I mean, bridges and the bridge just on the bridges, we're more than 100% over budget, over what was projected. Is there any explanation as to how we're so far different? Are there more bridges, or is there something different that we're doing?
No, sir. It's just that when we did the initial estimates, we did, staff looked at it, and also we had a firm look at it, and the scope was just off. And so when we did a relook and looking at the another detailed look, and things have changed since the initial estimate of 2015. And so part of it is that because the bridges the scope has changed a little bit in terms of what we need to do versus a minor modification to a major modification. And so, these are current numbers in terms of where we stand in terms of what the scope is. Yeah, you're correct. They're alarming in terms of compared to the initial scope to the current scope, and that's why we took a hard look to make sure that we're on track in terms of what we need from a funding standpoint. And so, for example, like the big one on the bridge over Palm Beach Lakes, that's a major cost increase, but we took a hard look in terms of we started some initial assessments on that. The structural needs are bigger than we thought initially, and so but you're correct. The numbers have increased dramatically, but the one key thing is that when we did the initial numbers, we did a rough scope in terms of where we're at, and we looked at what we thought was an initial, basically a minor modification. And once we got into it later on, just recently, found out we need to do more than just a minor modification, and that's why the numbers have increased dramatically. So,
I mean obviously that's a really important bridge because it's one of only two in the city of West Palm Beach that cross over the railroad tracks, and we've had situations where those trains stop and block almost virtually the entire city. Every crossing gets blocked, and there's no way for emergency vehicles to get around except to go over either there or at Southern Boulevard. So they're still 3 miles apart from each other.
Right, and that's why we looked for other sources of funding, like the county administrator indicated, and so we've submitted an application about this summer for a RISE federal grant to get $15 million for this project. And so we'll see the feedback on that grant submission. But even with the new federal infrastructure potential funding, we'll be submitting funding for whatever bridge project that we can be eligible for. So we're going to be ready to go on that to submit for extra funding if it's available. So. Okay,
and then on parks, I thought one of the things we just approved with our funding was to move all our parks from septic to sewer.
It's a large project list. It's not all of our projects.
It's not all of them?
Yeah, but we will, we still do have several on septic. But we will cross-reference the list to make sure there's no duplicates, and if there are on the IST, we'll certainly talk with the county administrator about making sure that that's funded.
And then my last comment is on the government center renewal and replacement, now up to roughly $70 million. I would really think that it makes sense to look at, we have the property just to the north of here, across the street, that we look at doing a replacement of this building. I think my understanding, I've talked to some construction people, they believe it would be cheaper to replace this building than to do a renewal and replacement based on their understanding of being inside this building and seeing how it was done and what needs to be done. So I would suggest and ask for, give direction to have that happen, that you
Commissioner
actually consider doing that and seeing what the cost difference would be. If any, it may be cheaper.
I think our county administrator would like to make a comment on that.
I'd love to have a brand-new shiny building, and if that developer is going to build it for this amount and guarantee it, I'd be recommending to this board to do it tomorrow. But our estimates are nowhere near that. They are substantially more. So again, I'm not being flippant at all, but I can assure you, based on our estimates that we have had input from the private sector as well, we could not replace this building with the things that we need for $69 million.
Well, it's almost 70 million.
Okay.
And I get out in the community, this is what they're telling me, and they say it can be done. And in fact, there's the disruption of the soft costs too, of what's going to happen, you wouldn't have those soft costs by having to relocate and move people around. So I would suggest it makes sense to relook at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Obviously, we've had this same conversation with respect to the South County Administrative Complex, and I think that we all agree that we should take a look at both options and see, what's more cost-effective on the long term. And I'm sure that there's offsetting savings, again, by moving away from this building and being able to put something up brand spanking new. You like that. Very good. Commissioner McKinley? Oh, did you want to?
I just wanted to point out, if I may, that the first deliverable we will have under the design contract will be precisely that, a full assessment and a comparison of the renovation versus replacement costs. Okay?
Okay, Commissioner McKinley.
Yes, thank you. And Commissioner Weiss, I would tell you that it takes me longer to get from Australian at Banyan than it does to get from Wellington to that intersection. So if we're going to look at replacement, I would suggest we not look at replacing in downtown West Palm Beach, which has made it extremely difficult for anybody to travel into downtown. On the gas tax issue, and so the governor's proposal in Daytona Beach yesterday was to basically subsidize $1 billion of gas tax, and it's the state's portion. It's that 18.4 cents that just went up from the CPI to 19 cents. I don't know how much of that revenue is redistributed to local governments, but it doesn't affect our local gas tax collection. It's also my understanding that they have indicated to industry leaders that money would be replaced by $1 billion sweep of the state's general fund. So if that does go through, we could probably expect to see cuts elsewhere. I would question if they are going to sweep the general fund where those dollars are coming from, because if they're coming from federal dollars, I believe there are Treasury rules that prohibit those relief dollars from being used to supplant a tax cut. Basically, that's what this would be a tax cut in the amount of $1 billion of our gas tax revenues, and I don't think it's allowed. And so, and they've also been, industry leaders have also been told that it wouldn't affect the current DOT work plan. And so those are things to factor in. And also in that announcement, and I'd love the TPA to tell us how this would be affected, he also proposed potential toll, what do you call it, forgiveness. And so those toll revenue collections, I believe, are spent in the county they're collected in. So I'd be curious to see how that affects our turnpike operations in Palm Beach County, because we have a lot of projects underway and a lot in the future. So lots of things to consider there. On the optimistic sales tax outlook that we have here, we had a great presentation by Bob McKee at the Florida Association of Counties conference last week, and of course he used to be one of the state's economists. He kind of linked the very positive year that we've had to large purchases that were initiated by stimulus dollars. So families who didn't need to use it for food and other day-to-day living expenses actually made those one-time appliance purchases, or they purchased a vehicle. And so those large increases aren't something that we should get used to, and we should actually start to see that level off. It was a really good presentation. I'll try to see if I can get a video of it for you. My questions are, we're 4 years into collecting these revenues, and we're still talking about the plan for the $25.5 million of assistance to the homeless and for affordable housing. How much of that have we actually spent? Ms. Baker?
We have not expended any of it at this point. However, in our next workshop session, we are going to talk about housing and the plans. This is a part of the plan to move it forward. We received some other dollars that we have utilized because they have a tight time frame on expending those dollars, so we're moving forward on it. We collect, remember, 2.5 per year, and that 2.5 per year does not actually put those units on the ground. So we're going to lay that out for you in our next session when housing comes before us.
Okay, and I would make a recommendation for you to consider and for the board to consider that if we should see a surplus in these dollars, that we pocket 50% of those surplus dollars for homeless and housing assistance, and then we use the remaining 50% on other infrastructure projects. Just something to toss out there for consideration. On the engineering projects, I'm happy to see a lot of Glades area projects in here, and some of them have been reduced, some of them have been increased. One of the other presentations that we had at the FAC meeting last week was the amount of federal dollars that the state will see. And Mr. Ricks, I would love to work with you. I already shot a text message to Secretary Thibault, and he responded with a phone call. We've been playing phone tag about perhaps they're going to be looking for big ticket items. And when I see in here that we're about to spend $3.3 million more on resurfacing County Road 880, I have been complaining about that road for 7 years. We keep putting Band-Aids on it. That's the kind of road that I think the last estimate you gave me to rebuild that road is something like $70+ million.
That is correct, because you got to get into the subsurface conditions, and so it's a very technical conversation. But if there's some big dollars, we can potentially have a very good conversation about what's the best fit for that.
I would love to work with you and the secretary, if he will allow us, in putting together a farm-to-market road plan, finance plan, a grant application, and submit that to the state and stop wasting dollars on Band-Aids and actually fix the root cause of these road problems out there.
I got that for action. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the last question I have for you, or actually a couple of them, are on Parks and Rec. So the 900,000 that you're proposing to remove from new parks, where's that cut coming from?
There we go, sorry. That is actually a re-estimation of the needs in the community. It's really just looking at what we had. So we have partnerships. So for example, Paulette Burdick Park was water utilities land. We didn't have to acquire that property for Cam Estates. So that was a cost savings there. We also see the opportunity to work for CDBG funding for a lot of our projects that we feel like we'll get funding for Gramercy Phase 2 in particular and others. So we see there's a savings to the IST plan for that because we're able to find those partnerships to not have the acquisition costs or the completion costs for the projects. So that's really just a reassessment of what we think we'll need that was deferred when this plan was first proposed.
Okay, so two concerns. One, Acreage Community Center. We have $3 million in that. Recently, the Acreage Landowners Association, I believe, in the Indian Trail Improvement District, passed a resolution on how they would like to see those dollars spent. Can we work with them officially and come up with a plan that best meets those communities' needs? I mean, we had originally said a community center. I think that there's a piece of that, and then there's some other park changes that they'd like to see at Acreage Community Park.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been dialoguing with them, and I think as long as it's under what the voters voted for, which it seems like that's their intention, we can certainly discuss with them and make sure that they have a plan to move forward.
Okay, I just want to make sure we don't lose those dollars from that community at any point.
Right.
I want to make sure they're spent as best we can there. And then the last comment I would have, as we start seeing dollar savings and other grant funding opportunities for our Parks Department, I'm going to bring up once again the issue of the community pool in the Glades and the desperate need for that. I am going to work very, very hard this legislative session to see if we can get some state money for that. I would just like to hold the thought in staff's brain that if there's an ability to help with some of that and funding with the city of Belle Glade to make sure that they have a community pool where their kids can learn how to swim, I would be appreciative. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Marino, you are recognized.
Thank you. In looking at the presentation, you use approved plan, and then you used approved project budget. What is the difference?
It's the same. The budget was probably used when it was actually budgeted in the system.
Okay. Why is it that all of the numbers under approved plan, and then when you go into approved project budget, that column, why don't any of those numbers match? All of the additional funding needs match, but approved project budget and proposed budget, those numbers, I'm getting a little confounded because they just don't match. So if you could explain that to me, I'd be appreciative, and I'll give you an example. Say,
So what we included are the projects that need additional funding. So if there's projects in the plan that are completed or don't need any additional funds, then it wasn't included on that slide. So we're just focused on, this is just the changes to it.
so these are just projects that have changes and poor forecasting. Sorry, there are so many items that we are looking for additional funding. It's a little scary when we've been in business for so long that, and I'm not pointing fingers, it just makes me very uncomfortable that there are so many items that the forecasting was wrong.
Well, the forecast, the budget was prepared for this plan probably back in 2015 when we first started talking about the sales tax, and it went into effect 2017. There have been tons of cost increased more recently, and some of it is scope changes also.
This is and you've heard, this is not new, what you're going to hear me say, because I've said it, especially in our agenda reviews. There's so many things that come in front of us that they didn't forecast, or it was unforeseen, or we have a project overrun. I really think we need to get, we have so many engineers in here. Why is it then when we finally get into the project, there's something that was unforeseen? Why isn't that taken into consideration when they're first budgeting the project? I'm just, I mean, if I were to build a house and I didn't take everything into consideration and then give myself a 10% or even 20%, unforeseen budget, we're still going over that. And I realize that metal is expensive right now. Finding employment is expensive right now. But I mean, some of these numbers are just astounding. And so I guess I'm venting, and it's a caveat going forward that we really need to do a better job in our forecasting and a better job in our unforeseen, here's our contingency budget. We're far exceeding our contingency budget. So I'm just a little concerned about that. Going forward, I really think we need to do a better job, because this is constant. This, whether it's here or whether it's when we're doing change orders at our just regular budget meeting, commission meetings, this is concerning to me.
Okay.
And I'm done. I'm just commenting, I'm rambling, but this is just very concerning to me. I mean, especially, here we have one of the septic to sewer in one of the park proposals in Juneau, I think it was Juneau Pier, went from, I thought I marked it here, 500 to well over a couple of $1 million, 500,000 to well over $1 million.
That was the scope change I talked about for Juneau Park, because it's so close to the Lake Worth Lagoon and our coastal waterway, that we initially were going to do just a septic to septic replacement. But it really is best practice when you're that close. And when we looked at the project list, doing septic to sanitary sewer, and that's one of the projects that we hope there'll be additional funding that comes to the county, that may be able to be handled outside the IST if that funding is available. But that was the major increase in that.
Yeah, 50,000 to 778,000, so.
All right, could you yield for a second to
Sure.
the
Go
county
right ahead.
administrator?
No, I'm listening to what she has to say.
Oh, okay, all right, go ahead.
It's just concern. What you're hearing from me right now is just concern. And I would be surprised if no one else here was concerned also, but the numbers just there's so many different forecasts. And some of the projects are just double in scope. When you read through all these, I'm just concerned, and I'm going to stop talking.
Commissioner Marino and any of the other board members, we're happy to come sit down with you, walk you through it. Some of these projects, bridges, for example, they're getting older. They were older than when we first looked at the scope of which we had budgeted. We estimated $800 million. We only allocated $700 million. The cost continues to escalate. There were bridges we thought we could repair through, and I forgot the technical terms for it, the big pipes.
Culverts. Yeah.
Culverts. And then some permitting agencies has decided, nope, can't use those. You need to build a bridge. So some of this cost is beyond our control in order to get those bridges replaced. For Parks and Rec, best practices have definitely changed our direction from this board regarding resiliency and moving forward. We have taken the purview that if we can find the funding to use best practices, resiliency, as opposed to what we projected back in 2015. Actually, some of these projects were looked at in 20 2012, I think, when we first started talking about a sales tax. It didn't move forward. And then in 15, when we struck it up again, we dusted off those projects, and best practices were totally different. Our emphasis on resiliency was different back in 2012 and 2015. So we have made some of those changes. The same projects, however, are in here. It's just, as stated earlier, the scope changed. We could go with the older stuff, and we'd probably be fine with some inflation factor as far as the cost of materials would slightly go up. But I believe this board, with your direction, has been to focus on resiliency, et cetera, and also some of the permitting agencies also, and that's probably why they won't allow us to use what we anticipated, culvert crossing as opposed to building a real bridge. They're requiring more. And so we can always do a better job at estimating. We can always do that, and we do. I am the budget person, and they understand when they come to ask for additional funding, I need major justification as to why we're doing so. So we did go through this. We will continue to monitor. We'll continue to, as projects come in or we start to look at them, we will value engineer those projects as well in order to save dollars. But these are the best estimates we can give the board at this time. They may come in lower or they may come in higher, depending upon factors outside of our control. But the scope, I do not anticipate continuing to change unless best practices dictate that we need to reconsider, or this board directs us otherwise.
Thank you, and I'm not trying to throw, seriously, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here. I just, you know, you've known me since day one, that I look at all the numbers and question overruns and forecasting that might not fit the bill. So I thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Very good. Commissioner Sachs, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we include within these projections monies that come from the state at all? Because I know that state funding helps to pay for septic to county, and I don't see in any of these inclusions anything that has to do with state money and or federal money coming in to help us in our budget.
No, we account for those in separate funds, so this is only talking about what we pay for out of the surtax. And there were a couple of projects, I know David mentioned there were 2 projects where FDOT did the projects, so they came off the list, and I think Parks has had some over the years. I can't think of one offhand, but as those projects are funded from grants, then they are deleted off the project list because they're funded elsewhere.
Okay, very good. So later, we will, and I'm hearing from the left side of my ear here, later, you will present to us those items that have been funded by state funds, as well as, hopefully, infrastructure from this bill that was just passed into law for infrastructure from the federal government, and also cities. I see that we do a lot of budget issues that concern cities. And I'd like to see also what do the cities contribute to some of these projects. And that will come later, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
What will come later at the end of the workshop, the last item is the budget year. And what we will walk you through is our budget, overall budget. And it shows revenues and revenue projections, which would include state sharing, et cetera, but not specific revenues by project. That will not come. However, as we move forward, as we have with CARES dollars, along with ARPA dollars, when these infrastructure dollars come down and we figure out how much we're going to get and what projects can be utilized, we can utilize those funds for those specific projects. We will be coming back to the board and providing that information to the board, requesting direction.
If I may respond, Mayor, this isn't the completed.
This is not the full CIP. No,
Right,
it's
okay.
not. It's only a piece of our capital improvement plan, and it's just dealing with those projects under surtax.
Okay, very good.
Ms. Baker, on that line, again, as we were talking about before, since this is such a fluid situation, how is the administration working through the process of getting these projects prioritized and ready for these inflows of revenues, whether it's coming from the federal government or other sources, so that we're prepared to take advantage of anything that's going to come to us?
We have our 5-year capital plan, which the board approves in every year. So that first year is assurance, because it's ready to rock and roll. Those projects should be ready to move forward. So we have a plan. So if we receive additional funding from other sources, we look at those projects to see what we can supplant
So you're
those
ready
dollars
to
with.
accelerate some of those projects should you have additional funding?
I'm sorry?
You'd be ready to accelerate some of those projects on the CIP if you had additional funding?
Yes, we take them in the order that is laid out in the 5-year capital plan unless otherwise directed by the board.
Okay, all right. And what we haven't discussed, and I guess we're going to at some point in the future, is what we may be prepared to do behind the IST as that sunsets. And we've had this sort of peripheral conversation. We've also had that conversation at the TPA, but I think that this is probably the better place to have that conversation as far as a strategy for whether that's something that we can get behind. And I see you smiling. I'm not going to ask you to take a position on that right now. All right. I think we've beaten this subject to death. And unless there's any more conversation, we're ready to move on to our next agenda item.
Great, thank you.
Okay, very good. Again, it's 11:30. It is my intention to break at noon if it makes sense. We'll see how long the next presentation takes. All right, so we're now going to do the strategic planning, cross-departmental team presentation. Sherry, you going to stay here?
I'm staying with you all day, so.
All right. Do you want us to order you some lunch?
I have been, hyping up OFMB Day to, my peers for a couple of months, so we're ready.
All right, we'll order in some lunch. Commissioner Bernard.
Mr. Mayor, how long will this presentation take? Should we take lunch first, or do we want to?
If you'd like, I think we can get through at least one team before lunch and then come back afterwards for the rest. There's 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little early to break right now, so why don't we do one team and then we'll break.
If we can get 2 in. I asked them to kind of keep their presentations to 10 minutes, but no one listens to me in that regards. But I will say there's a lot of passion in our departments, and they're excited about their presentations, so.
Okay, Sherry.
All right.
The floor is yours.
Okay.
All set?
All set. We'll go ahead and start with our environmental protection team.
Good morning.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sherry. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Administrator Baker. As you know, our mission is to drive a continuous improvement culture of excellence that achieves a measurably high level of public satisfaction. Under your direction and the leadership of Administrator Baker, we have put together 6 cross-department teams focused on your 6 strategic priorities. Over 30 departments and offices in Palm Beach County, all hands are on deck, focused on how to make and keep the county a great place to live, work, and play. Each team is designed to include departments who play a major role in addressing your 6 strategic priorities. These teams have been intentional on collaborating and working together to implement your strategic plan. With that said, our first team up is environmental protection.
Good morning. I'm Matthew King with the county's Environmental Resources Management, and I'm joined today by several other members of the Environmental Protection Cross-Department team that will highlight the work of the team agencies over the past year. We want to thank the Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and the County Administrator for hosting us today. The team is excited to be here to share some of our accomplishments from when we presented last year. Next slide, please. In addition to focusing on environmental goals and metrics, the team looked to make community connections, one of which was through a partnership with Discover the Palm Beaches, where spearheaded the production of Hidden Wild, a 30-minute documentary where 3 Palm Beach County high school students discovered their connections with the natural land and its wildlife. Over 7 days, they hiked, biked, kayaked, and camped their way from Lake Okeechobee to where the Loxahatchee River meets the Intracoastal in Jupiter. The documentary aired on PBS in South Florida this past January and across other Florida markets on Earth Day. In addition, the school district assembled a team of science teachers that developed a curriculum based on the film that will roll out this year in 7th and 10th grade classrooms. I'd like to share with you a short trailer for the film, and if you haven't seen the documentary yet, you will after watching this clip.
Walking through a Florida swamp is like walking back in time.
Being in the river, being with those alligators. It's a little Jurassic Parky out there. You think a dinosaur might get you, you know?
I've never camped in my life before. People can go their whole lives living 5 miles from the Everglades, never having been there.
Be prepared, it's actually quite wet out there. Most people don't even know these things exist.
And if you blink, they would be like right in front of you.
I sat like in the water and one came up to me, looked me right in the eye.
I never thought I could do something like that. This is literally in my own backyard, and I have never been educated on things like this.
I've learned stuff out here that a whole year of school wouldn't teach me, you know?
Walk in there and stay in there for 5 days and you're gonna come out a new person.
Thank you. Can we have all the environmental CDT members that are here today please stand up? As you can see from those standing to the list of team partners on the slide, the diversity of the representing agency acknowledges the importance of environmental protection and the role it plays across various disciplines. Next slide, please. Environmental protection is one of the 6 strategic priorities being addressed by the county government. We organize our team efforts under these 6 goals, which collectively serve to protect and enhance our natural resources, which in turn supports our healthy economy, strong communities, and a high quality of life for our residents and visitors. The next few slides will highlight some of our accomplishments for these 6 goals during 2021. Starting us off on Goal 1 is Deb Drum, Director of the county's Environmental Resources Management. Next slide.
Good morning. For the environmental cross-departmental teams, Goal 1, we are focused on sustaining healthy, vibrant beaches that are safe and inviting to residents and visitors alike. In addition to protecting coastal infrastructure, such as buildings and roads, beaches provide an essential backdrop to our local economy, specifically tourism. Data from the Tourism Development Council indicates that in their target markets, 75% of people are interested in a beach vacation. We continued to meet all of our goals with regard to sand placement to protect county coastal properties and infrastructure, and this year that equated to 2.1 million cubic yards of sand on Palm Beach County beaches, which is more than our performance metric goal of 1.4 million cubic yards. That amount equates to filling up 636 Olympic-sized swimming pools and is the 6th highest placement volume since 1993. In addition to replenishing our beaches, we had a significant focus this year on the protection of sea turtles through increased awareness of our sea turtle lighting ordinance. In addition to our regulatory inspections and follow-up coordination enforcement efforts, we hosted a joint virtual webinar with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to work with municipalities, code enforcement officials, and the general public on the importance of proper beachfront lighting to protect sea turtles. Finally, we also continued coordinating with the Florida Department of Health on monitoring fecal coliform bacterial levels and post-educational signage regarding water safety at public beaches. Next slide, please. This graph represents the county's metric to maintain an 11-year moving average of sand placement along our beaches to offset losses to inlets and natural processes. This metric, the 11-year time average, is used to account for typical project cycles that include many years of project design, permitting, and securing grant funds, as well as the 7 to 8 year design life of each project. Last year, over 2 million cubic yards of sand was placed along county beaches, which increased that 11-year moving average to 1.4 million cubic yards. Next, Natalie Fremberg from the Office of Resilience will provide an update on Goal 2.
Thank you, Deb. For Goal 2, we are focused on maintaining diverse, resilient ecosystems, and we've accomplished many tasks in that regard. We've continued to protect native species and their habitats around Palm Beach County. We have 5% or less invasive exotic vegetation coverage on 85% of county parks and 100% of Environmental Resources Management's natural areas. We had a successful nesting season with 4 American oystercatcher chicks hatching at Tarpon Cove, Grassy Flats, and Snook Islands. Also, a colony of 20 black skimmers and at least 50 terns nested at Tarpon Cove, with over 15 least terns chicks fledging. This year we had nearly 8,400 volunteer hours related to residential horticultural and Florida-friendly landscaping. And we've worked hard to protect and improve the waters of the Lake Worth Lagoon estuary. We've updated the Lake Worth Lagoon Management 10-year plan to include watershed management approach. We successfully advocated for less future Lake Okeechobee discharges to the Lake Worth Lagoon estuary under the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Lake Okeechobee Operational Plan, and that's expected to take effect by the end of 2022. Palm Beach County anticipates receiving $48 million from FDEP later this fiscal year for the C-51 Phase 2 reservoir, which will be in western Palm Beach County. This project is intended to reduce harmful discharges to the Lake Worth Lagoon, which will help sustain this critical estuarine ecosystem. And lastly, we held 6 water resource task force meetings, including a joint meeting with Broward County's Water Advisory Board. Next slide, please. A major part of Palm Beach County's environmental program is maintaining its natural acres and promoting access, which includes environmental resource management and parks land. Palm Beach County is so fortunate to have a robust volunteer program to protect our natural areas, such as Parks and Recs nature centers, beach cleanups, cooperative extension, and the Environmental Resources Department management lands. As you can see in this graph, the total environmental hours increased significantly from 2018 to 2019. Although COVID-19 had an impact on our 2020 volunteer hours, many volunteers are returning to give back to the environment in 2021, and the numbers are climbing back towards the 2019 high. We expect them to continue this increase in 2022. Next, I'll be handing it over to William Wynn for the Office of Community Revitalization.
For Goal 3, we are proud to be working collectively to protect and support human health, safety, water quality, and quality of life. Over the last year, the county has completed 18 community improvement projects within CCRT areas ranging from community gardens and neighborhood parks to street and pathway improvements by installing speed humps and installing new and repairing existing sidewalks. The CDTs engaged with external partners this past fiscal year through crossover CDT meetings. For example, the Environmental Protection and Substance Use and Behavior Disorder CDTs work together to hold partnership meetings with the Healthier Together Network. Healthier Together is a public health-driven project where 6 Palm Beach County communities are taking action for health policy and systems transformation. At these meetings, we discuss how the built environment could support overall community health and ways that the county and our nonprofit partners can support each other's work. The county performed blue-green algae reconnaissance activities on surface waters throughout the county and reported to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's algae reporting portal for follow-up monitoring. The county has completed 15 prescribed burns on 2,600 acres of natural areas and parks, which contributes to a safer environment for all. This is an increase of 9 burns and a 520% increase from the 2020 acreage burns. In addition, through a grant from FEMA, we conducted mechanical vegetation reduction on close to 900 acres at 17 Palm Beach County natural areas. Lastly, engineering and the environmental CDT have a renewed focus on stormwater. The stormwater section of engineering and public works have 6 new positions and 4 new trucks, 12 positions total. The goal for the stormwater section is to minimize and reduce the flooding of county infrastructure and to improve water quality within our water bodies. To continue with Goal 3, Jamie Basio from the library.
Thank you, William. Sorry. Hi. Next slide, please. Thank you. Continuing with our goal of protecting our residents' health and safety, the county is working to ensure that all of Palm Beach County has a comprehensive climate change vulnerability assessment completed. Vulnerability assessments help us plan for current and future climate hazards by evaluating exposure and risk so we can prioritize our resources. In the summer of 2021, the county completed a joint climate change vulnerability assessment with 7 municipalities through the Coastal Resilience Partnership of Southeast Palm Beach County. The team was shortlisted to receive new funding through the state's Resilient Florida Grant Program and is continuing a partnership with Harvard's Environmental Law Clinic. In addition, the county was selected by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity to receive an $800,000 reimbursable grant to complete a climate change vulnerability assessment for unincorporated and Western Palm Beach County and use that assessment to inform and complete a countywide resilience action plan. In addition, over the last year, the county has continued well field protection and petroleum storage tank inspections and conducted remediation activities to protect drinking water. We've also promoted the goal of 1 acre of county parks property to 184 residents by building 1 new park at Belvedere Heights. Finally, our Water Utilities Department also ensures that we have safe drinking water. Last year, the Water Utilities Department performed more than 75,000 laboratory tests and was in 100% compliance with all federal and state regulatory requirements. The department was also selected by the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity to receive a $2.7 million reimbursable grant to upgrade electrical, mechanical, and pipe systems and install a new generator at the Western Region North Wastewater Treatment Facility in Pahokee. Next slide, please. Thank you. An example of how the county helps support water quality is displayed here. The engineering department has recently added new equipment and staffing to further its street sweeping program. Street sweeping helps us protect water quality by removing debris so it doesn't end up in stormwater runoff. As you can see, with each fiscal year, the county is increasing the miles of streets swept. Next slide, please. Now to present is Kristen Burnson from the Water Utilities Department.
Thank you, Jamie. Our 4th goal is focused on ensuring a positive environmental experience for residents and visitors. In order to achieve that, we've partnered with the City of Boca Raton Spanish River Library by installing weather-resistant enclosures along the paved accessible nature trail, highlighting an environmentally focused kids book, and the stories are updated quarterly. We restarted and expanded the Tri-City Trailblazers program to include monthly trips to county natural areas for youth empowerment centers in Belle Glade, Lake Worth Beach, and Riviera Beach. Staff rotate between youth empowerment centers each month, working with our youth services department and introducing positive connections to nature for the youth in these communities. continued its Green Futures internship program in 2021, which is a paid internship that targets disadvantaged youth and youth of color and aims to expose these interns to the various pathways towards careers and connections with nature and our natural resources. Water Utilities started planning the Green Cave Phase 2 project that includes a water purification facility, a state-of-the-art education and learning facility, and we've partnered with Parks with the expansion of a 63-acre park with public access waterways. Now I'll turn it over to Jennifer Cirillo with Parks and Recreation to continue with Goal 4.
Thank you, Kristen. Continuing with Goal 4 of ensuring positive environmental experiences for residents and visitors. Over the last year, Parks and Recreation has initiated the development of a re-greening master plan to provide a framework for the increasing number of requests for partnership and funding opportunities to improve both the natural aesthetics and tree canopy within parks. The county has also provided outdoor recreation and environmental programming to over 6,000 participants at Riverbend Park and the county's 3 nature centers, Okehele, Dagger Wing, and Green Cay. and to over 3,000 participants at Palm Beach County Natural Areas. 99% of these people rated their participation in these programs as important to their quality of life and that they would return. Visitation has been very high this year, with more than 1 million visitors to nature centers in Riverbend Park and close to 500,000 visitors to Palm Beach County Natural Areas. 98% of our visitors say that park experience increased their appreciation for the environment. In addition, 7 Parks and Rec employees completed the Climate for Health Ambassadors training. Next slide, please. As Deb mentioned earlier, the number one reason for visitation in Palm Beach County are our 47 miles of beaches. Starting in 2020, the effect of COVID-19 was evident on our tourism numbers. However, through the first 2 quarters of 2021, we saw an increase in numbers, and by the end of the year, we're projecting the visitors to Palm Beach County beaches will exceed the 5.2 million visitors in 2020. I'm now going to turn it over to Megan Houston from the Office of Resilience.
Good morning. The county promotes sustainable, resilient practices and principles across the community. The Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact, of which Palm Beach County is a founding member, hosted 3 virtual workshops this past year with over 250 registrants at each event. The workshops focused on climate equity, climate change vulnerability assessments, and extreme heat. On December 9th and 10th, 2021, just in a couple of weeks, Palm Beach County is hosting the Climate Compact's 13th Annual Climate Leadership Summit. Notable speakers include our regional commissioners and administrators, Senator and NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, and Chair Brenda Mallory with the White House Council on Environmental Quality. On the policy side, the county drafted 2 new water conservation-related ordinances and initiated amendments to the Unified Land Development Code in accordance with the South Florida Water Management District's mandatory year-round landscape irrigation conservation measures rule. Staff will be proposing board adoption for early 2022. Finally, the county's building division ensures that buildings are meeting energy and water conservation code requirements, such as ensuring occupancy sensor lighting controls are provided and ensuring that all new potable water and sanitary drainage systems are appropriately sized for efficient fixtures. The county also permits on-site solar photovoltaic projects. This past year, we processed nearly 83,000 total building permits, nearly 8,000 plumbing permits, and over 700 solar-related permits. Now I'll turn it over to Steve Carrier with engineering.
Continuing with Goal 5, the county looks for cost-effective opportunities to reduce energy and water consumption and increase operational sustainability. Regarding renewable energy, the county is partnering with FP&L on solar power opportunities both on and off-site. We also use solar power at several locations serving signage, pathway, and security lighting. In addition, almost all the school flashers are solar powered, 170 of them, and 38 other warning and pedestrian flashers are also solar powered. Regarding energy efficiency, the county spends about $23 million on electricity and $4 million on water each year. The county is routinely converting lighting to LEDs, which reduces maintenance and improves energy efficiency and saves money. Parks is currently in the 4th year of a 6-year conversion of all sports field lighting. To date, 39 athletic fields out of 58 and 17 courts out of 108 have been converted to LED lights, and engineering is converting a planned 12,000 street lights through the 1-penny sales surtax. As to electric vehicle stations, FDO is collaborating with Resiliency to install EV charging equipment infrastructure at various county facilities as part of a pilot program. Recently completed at the Governmental Center Garage, and next up is the Convention Center Garage. The board will hear much more about this issue from the Infrastructure CDT. Regarding sustainability initiatives, as mentioned on the earlier slide, Parks continues to look for opportunities to plant more trees as part of their regreening master plan. In addition, the county is working on reducing polystyrene and other single-use plastic waste at county facilities. We have conducted a county survey and analyzed purchasing trends and local ordinance examples for us to bring back to the board for direction in early 2022. And Water Utilities is always looking to advance water conservation. For example, over 23 million gallons per day of reclaimed water was distributed for irrigation use, and over 500 million gallons of water was recycled by the Waxahachie and Green Cay wetlands. Next slide. So vehicle miles traveled are an important indicator of sustainability because they are linked to greenhouse gas emissions as well as whether people can afford to live close to where they work. This chart just illustrates what has happened with the daily number of miles traveled by vehicle within Palm Beach County. The goal is obviously reduction, and the dramatic reduction you see in fiscal year 20 is unfortunately caused by COVID-19. And now for goal 6, and to close us, Ron Rice with Cooperative Extension.
Thanks, Steve. Our final goal focuses on preserving and enhancing our thriving agricultural industries. We supported the Western Palm Beach County Farm Bureau with $25,000 in grant funding to help them organize the 2021 Sweet Corn Fiesta, which was an in-person, family-friendly event that attracted over 2,600 visitors. Now, this is a smaller crowd than in times past, but the show went on, and the agriculture appreciation message occurred, and people had fun. The event distributed 900 crates of sweet corn, which is roughly 43,000 ears of sweet corn. We delivered 52 educational workshops to 1,947 sugarcane, rice, and vegetable farmers, as well as nursery industry clients. And these trainings covered topics like pest identification, weed control, best management practices, environmental stewardship, improved variety selections, soil crop nutrition, and other recommended crop management practices. Agriculture workforce safety includes worker protection requirements, pesticide safety, COVID prevention, heat safety precautions, personal protection equipment, heavy machinery use, and harvest operations safety. And to this end, we delivered 95 training events to 1,730 clients while delivering 1,946 continuing education units that support state-required licenses and certifications related to safety. Next, please. With respect to horticultural best practices that include Florida-friendly landscaping principles and a focus on embracing native plants, we delivered 98 educational events to 3,412 homeowners and gardening enthusiasts. Across the 245 educational events delivered to agriculture, nurseries, and Green Thumb homeowners, 158 events were virtual. That's roughly 64%. And the remaining 87 events, roughly 36%, were in person. In the past 4 years, the Office of Community Revitalization has helped create 12 community gardens. 5 of these are in the CCRT areas. 7 gardens are also in the different municipalities, with 4 more gardens currently in design phase. Now, these gardens embrace volunteerism from the surrounding community. Healthy foods are grown and harvested, and these group activities promote social relationships and community pride. In partnership with the South Florida Fair, our 4-H Youth Development Program delivers the animal ethics and agricultural trainings that are required for students to raise and then showcase their livestock animals at the fairgrounds. On a different topic, in partnership with our Native Canopy Education Program launched an online voucher system for improved efficiencies in this virtual world, which distributed 1,650 native plants while educating nearly 2,000 homeowners on proper planting methods and native plant care. Next, please. To support a thriving ag community in Palm Beach County, the Cooperative Extension Department organizes activities and delivers trainings that are specific to farmers, plant nurseries, and ag support industries. And this graph shows the annual number of clients that we reached with educational programs that target new crop production technologies and ag safety trainings. Now, over this 5-year period of time, an annual average of 2,362 continuing education units were earned by our clients. And again, these CEUs support the professional licenses required by the state for specific safety-related work responsibilities in ag, professional landscaping, and environmental protection. Next, please. So, moving forward, our environmental protection cross-department team will continue to support the 6 goals that we discussed today. We'll continue to explore overall waste reduction strategies, particularly looking at our consumption habits for polystyrene products and single-use plastics, and looking deeper into recycling strategies at the department levels. We'll continue to seek partnerships and work with other agencies that have interests similar to our own. And we'll continue our cross-department collaborations that relate to the stewardship of our natural resources and the adoption of preferred environmentally friendly practices. Next, please. So in closing, on behalf of our environment team, we want to thank the Board of County Commissioners